Welcome, everybody. So I'll be talking about using Advanced Custom Fields Pro 5.8 to build custom Gutenberg blocks. So who's developers in the room? Most everybody, and any content managers or, all right. So this is kind of an in-between because it's a developer light approach to building Gutenberg custom blocks. Another question, who's currently running Gutenberg in production? Okay, so we have some early adopters that are jumping right in. So this is good because this gives you a tool set to work with your stakeholders and provide them new types of content opportunities. So again, I'm Nathan. I've been doing WordPress, Drupal 7. More recently, I've very much into ADA compliance, as we all are, and I like vegetables. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm at. I'm not on the other sites. So I am going to be referring to a repository that I created for this example. So if you want to check that out, you can find it on GitHub at that URL. And also I have the demo website at this URL, dev-wpcampus.pantheonsite.io. And I actually provided an author login if you want to go ahead and log in and check it out. Just please don't post any inappropriate content there. But if you want to log in, you can try it out for yourself. So I want to thank Georgetown for allowing me to be here and share this session with you guys. I want to thank Pantheon for their platform, because that's where I'm hosting the demo site for today. And then obviously Advanced Custom Fields for being very innovative in this approach. So Gutenberg is here. It sounds like you're all dealing with that. So we have a lot to grapple with. There's a lot of changes that come along with Gutenberg, and that has to do with our content creators. Also just the way we're developing for the web. It's a paradigm shift, and when you're going to deploy Gutenberg, in some cases it's going to break your website, break all your content. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to think about what are the existing custom fields that you're using, how is that going to roll into Gutenberg, what are the custom post types that you're running, and are those going to utilize Gutenberg or classic editor or custom fields. Are you running a page builder, because likely that's going to break. And you're going to want to do a content analysis. I'm going to talk a little bit about designing your content, because that's going to be critical in building usable, reusable blocks of content that your content managers are going to enjoy using. Of course, user training is a big part of it. So I'm going to exit out of my presentation and give you a quick demo of the actual plugin here. So the plugin creates two things: a custom post type that is a faculty profile content type that has custom fields on it, which you can load up all the information about a faculty. It's really set up for if you have a faculty information management system. The idea is you're going to import that into WordPress, and you're going to map all those fields. And that's what our block is going to reference, is a custom post type. So here we see various faculty that are all the faces are actually AI generated. So none of these people actually exist. These photos are not actual people, which is kind of interesting. If you want to check that out, it's thispersondoesnotexist.com, which is pretty neat. It shows you headshots of people that do not exist. There's also one that exists for cats as well. So it's an interesting project there, but that's where all these headshots come from. So we see the block here on the front end, and I'll just give you a quick demo of the layout that we have running for this guy. So it is responsive, so you're going to see it, flex and change a little bit. So that's the front end, but if we go ahead and open up Gutenberg, we're going to see this in action. So here we see the same thing we saw on the front end, and you saw that I changed So who's been working with Gutenberg so far? So okay, so we have some people that are going to be familiar with these options that we're going to be working with today. So really what this consists of is custom fields, and we see that here, and if we switch to edit mode, we see the custom fields in place here. And the first field we see is a post object field, and that allows us to pull in these profiles from our custom post type that we've created. And again, you can reorder them, drag and drop via the advanced custom fields. These are all standard advanced custom fields. There's nothing different about the way we're using ACF here from the way we use it anywhere else. So that's why it's a really cool approach, because if you're already running advanced custom fields, this just opens up a whole new opportunities for you. So if I put it back in preview mode, you'll see that this is where, you know, you can really see this happen in real time, where I just set up here a select list that has various styles that are applied to some generic styling. So this is where you really gonna want to create some constraints for your users, and here this is one way of doing it, is just apply like some standard styles to this. Again, you can see it change in real time. So I just have circles, squares, just as an example. You can change the text and background color and the accent color. So that's what we see here. So if you see this, you change it to dark blue and you see it change right in place there. So that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about how I made this with advanced custom fields. So I'm going to jump back into the presentation. All right, so before you go in and just create numerous blocks and go wild with it, you want to think about what's the strategy here, because you're going to end up ultimately with the block library, and there's a risk of overloading Gutenberg's interface, really some bloat there. So before you embark on this block building endeavor, you're going to want to think about who are the stakeholders that you got to involve here. And it's not just a development task. It's who's designing the content, who's building the content, what's the user experience. You're all web developers, so you're critical here. What are the web style guides that you're going to want to implement with these fields? And what are the constraints you put on this content so it's all conforming to your brand? So you see here Pattern Lab, and this is really a design system that really allows you to build templates with patterns. And we see here that it's this atomic design principle where you're really creating pieces that build on each other. So you can imagine an atom would be a button. A molecule might be a couple fields and a button to create a form, right? That might be an organism. And then all these roll up into a template. And Pattern Lab is a system that allows you to do this. It runs on Node, or there's a PHP version as well. And what I'll do is I'll show you Georgetown's Pattern Lab. And really, again, this is before you go and build blocks, you're going to want to have patterns that you're implementing. So you're not going to have a hodgepodge mess, which can happen. So here's Pattern Lab in action. Pattern Lab creates a website where you can see the interface elements and you can see the code and a little bit of documentation about it. And in this case, we see a button. Very simple, but this all rolls up and you can see our system doesn't use atoms, molecules, and organisms. We're calling it base, fields, components, and templates. So it really allows you to put consistency into your interface from the outset, but at the same time allow for variances. So this system really facilitates that. So I would recommend having a design system in place before you go wild with building blocks. So I just wanted to show that before we get into the actual nitty-gritty. I call it the Pandora's block because it can get messy. So the actual process of using ACF to do this is extremely simple. They have it down to 3 steps, and you can find this on their documentation. Very well documented, just like all of ACF. So the first thing you do is you register the block, you create your field groups. Again, this is what you're already doing with advanced custom fields. So it's not going to be new to you. And then the last piece is what makes this different from the JavaScript approach, which is the API that Gutenberg uses, is there's no JavaScript involved. You're using PHP templates, so what you're used to if you're not a JavaScript developer, this is going to be a good choice for you. On the flip side, if you have JavaScript build tools, you're already doing a build process for JavaScript apps, you probably don't need to use this approach, and you might want to just go for it with React and do that. But if you're not, this is a good option for you. So the first thing you're going to want to do is, this is a plugin, so the example on ACF is implemented via your theme, and it's all in functions.php. But if you're running multiple sites, you might want to basically build a block library and deploy it as a plugin, so you can run this in multiple places across different sites. And this example uses that custom post type I was mentioning, so it's a little different from some of the documentation you'll find on ACF, but I think this is an interesting use case because a lot of times you have content somewhere, but you want to lay it out on a page in a different way. And again, faculty profiles is common. I think that's a common content type that people want to show on the public side. So I'll just show you a little bit of the repo here. So I use the plugin boilerplate from the WordPress documentation to get this started. I think it probably was a little bit robust for this example. I don't think I probably needed all these files to make this happen, but this is based on the boilerplate. And we have the admin section where we've created our custom post type. Sorry, that's actually in the include section. And then on the admin side, you're going to have, so the interesting thing is you can have a template for your Gutenberg interface of your block, and you also can have one for the front end. So the idea here is maybe within the Gutenberg editor, your responsive styles are tweaked a little bit because it's within the editor, you have less space, any sort of extra editing capabilities you want to style on the Gutenberg side, and then you can have a different template for the front end. And I'll show you that in the code when we get to it. But here's the repository if you want to get in there. I encourage you to use it, abuse it, whatever you think works. So I deployed this with GitHub Updater. So this is a neat little tool. You may have heard it in, was it Eric's talk? I think you mentioned this. So GitHub Updater basically takes your GitHub URL and all you do is you add a plugin URI, but it's GitHub plugin URI, and you're able to basically deploy updates for your plugin just by pushing a new version to GitHub. So it's if you're a small team and you're outside of the main IT team and you still want to support plugins and push updates, GitHub Updater is a good option, especially if you're using GitHub. We use it quite a bit because we're on a small team outside of main IT. We have our own plugins that we develop, and we still want to push updates from a centralized location. So it's pretty handy for that. And it does work with private repositories as well. All of our repositories are private, so you can use a key there and still push these updates. And they've actually enabled branching as well, so you can deploy different branches to your different environments using GitHub Updater. So I found this to be a pretty neat tool. So first thing you're going to do is register your block. So this is the only unique part about this approach. Super easy. Here it is. So for our example, it's very basic. You have an action and you have a function. And then inside that function, all we're doing is running this ACF register block. And we're just putting some information about our block here. You'll see the name there, see the title, there's a description. So on the next slide, I'll show you the other approach, slightly different, but you have the category that's going to put it into a specific section when you pull up your block panel. In this case, it's under formatting. You can use dash icons for your icon here. That's what I'm using. And this example actually heavily relies on dash icons for all the the icons you saw. So I tried to make it as lightweight as possible, use Flexbox so there's not any libraries driving this. We also have the keywords, that's for searching, and then mode is something that you won't see in the ACF example, but this is basically, I wanted to, since we're referencing content, until you put content, until you reference a post, there is nothing to display. So mode is the ability to pick which way your block shows up when you first add it. So you can have the preview mode, which the example that ACF has is going to show you a testimonial, and it has sort of a blank layout there that'll show you, and that's the preview mode. But I wanted to present them with the fields first. So that's where we have mode here, and we're able to select edit there. And then alignment as well. You can kind of choose if you want to allow alignment for your block or not, and then pick which ones would be available for this. And what's neat about ACF is ACF blocks is that it's going to utilize some of those same native block functionality that you have. So you really start with a basic block just like all the other blocks. So this is the example from ACF's documentation, and you'll see that I'm using the render callback here, and that's referring to a function that's going to tell the block what to do. And here it just points to a file. So this is if you're going to implement it in your theme, and you can see that it goes to the template parts, and they do suggest that you have a blocks folder and another folder for that block, and then the block file is actually inside of there. So if you're going to implement this in a theme, you'll want to look at their documentation. All right, so we're probably all familiar with this part, and you're going to create your field group. In this case, I'm using two field groups, one for the actual content type itself, the post type, and that has all the information about the faculty member. But here we have the block settings. I don't know if it's too small to see, but we have the styling options, and basically your fields are going to be your block settings. So this is pretty straightforward. Here I've got a post object, which allows us to pull in posts, the select list, which is those preset styles, and then a few color options. Again, you want to be careful with what options you're building into these blocks, especially if you have brand guidelines. You're going to want to lock them down here for sure. Okay, so here's a screenshot. Again, probably too small to see, but if you have the slides on your computer, you might want to reference them. So I wanted to talk a little bit about accessibility. We implemented blocks for an editorial site called thefeed.georgetown.edu, and we really wanted it to be our flagship accessible website and really high level of compliance. So a lot of these fields here are for accessibility, and they're as simple as, what's the link label going to be, right? So you might show in our example it says view profile over and over again, but what I've done there is I've dynamically put some fields in the label, so they're all unique. So you're not going to get these accessibility problems. So so here, this is all for a single link. You have an option to make it a button or a link text, accessible link label. A lot of description and instructional text here. So this is all more of an advanced custom fields thing, but how you instruct the user to build is going to be important, and how you lock it down, what options you provide, very important. And then really the way you connect your fields to your block is simple. With 5.8 Pro, you're going to have show this field group if, and normally you're attaching this to a post type or a widget, because you can do that as well. You're going to see block there if it's 5.8. And it's pretty simple. If the block's been registered, you're going to see it here. In this case, we registered the faculty profile block, and it's available. Once you do that, you've got your block, you've got your settings, you're ready to go. Now you just have to build your template. All right, looks like I'm going pretty fast here. So now you're going to do your templates. And like I said, you might want to have two templates. You might want to have an admin template for the actual Gutenberg editor, and then you're probably going to want, you need your front end template as well. So think about how you structure that. If it's in a plugin, you know, where you put that. But if it's in the theme, it's all going to be in the template parts folder, and you might want to have, you know, we've done it with one file in the past where we just do the if admin, you know, show this, else show that. But I think it's good to kind of think about how you want to configure these templates, and I would suggest having two separate files if that's what you need for a block, if it does vary from the back end to the front end. All right, so here we see the actual content of the block, and I'll talk a little bit about the CSS styles, but really what you see here is the loop from the post objects is the field where we've included all of our different profiles. So all we're doing is looping through that field, and then we're printing the fields here. We're just, you know, checking if they exist with the get field. So that's the way you're going to be able to display your field with ACF in your templates. And then I would like to note one thing is we see this echo ID. That's actually coming from the block object. That's the ID of the block, which is important if you're going to want to use multiple blocks on the same page, for instance, that are going to have different properties or styles that you're applying to it. So we're going to see that on the next slide. But yeah, basically all you're seeing here is what we saw in that template was the image, the name, the number, a few icons from dashcons. And then I mentioned the view profile button. I've stuck in the title here, I actually just stuck the first name in there to make each view profile unique. So it's going to be a little bit more informative for screen readers when they go through this content. All right, so yeah, like I just mentioned, you're going to be using the get field. In this case, I'm passing the post ID in there, but normally you don't always need to use the post ID, but in this case, since we're looping through many posts, you're going to want to pass that in as well. All right, so how do you use these settings in your template? And it's as easy as this. We saw the block ID, so you're going to have access to this in these templates. So you can get like alignment information from the block and use it in your templates. That's going to be important. In this case, I'm just using the ID, and that's so when I'm doing my dynamic styles or the inline styles that are going to come from these options, you can actually target that particular block. So it's not going to affect all the blocks of that type, and you can really target the specific instance. And here, these are just the options that we've all looked at before. These were the variables that were in the template. We have some defaults that I'm putting there with the ternary. But yes, it's as simple as that. And then you're up and running. And here we see this is also in the template. These are the dynamic styles. It's a little bit messy. I will admit that I was halfway through and I had to add some of the mobile styles, and it was a little bit of redundancy there. But yeah, you see I've set up those kind of 4 different preset styles, but each can still use these sort of dynamic inputs of the colors as well. So this is, and you see I'm using the ID there. That's the block ID. That way we're isolating it to just the block that we've created, that specific instance. So if you want to have multiple blocks of the same type on the page, you're still going to be able to have, let's say, alternating colors, which is pretty common. All right, I went through that pretty quickly. So here's some resources. I already showed you where to get the GitHub repo. I'll say it's not a production ready plugin, so don't try to install this and build profiles. You're going to want to take a look at it and learn from it, but it's not production ready. The session demo is the website, so I encourage you to check that out. Again, Pantheon allows you to create dev environments for free. It's pretty cool. And actually, since we have a little bit of time, I'll show you Local Dev, which is a new desktop app that they've put out that allows you to sync with their platform and pull down all your content. And then here, you guys know where to find all this information about ACF. And then there's a link for design assets for blocks if you're into it. I think I didn't include it, but there's some pretty cool sketch files for Gutenberg if you do that. Again, I went over this kind of quickly, but you're going to want to design your content, not just the interface. You're going to want to talk to the content managers and say, what kind of content are you trying to create, right? And that's actually a good segue. I'll show you, since we have time, the example that we built, and we actually put this out when it was beta. The ACF 5.8 was still in beta at the time, but we thought it worked so well that we just jumped right into it. So this is the feed.georgetown.edu, and it's an editorial site, so this is higher ed information, content marketing, and here's a very similar example. So we have a promotion content type, post type, and this, we really wanted to lock this down stylistically, so there wasn't going to be a bunch of different little snippets in between stories that were, vastly different. So we came up with, these are the types of promotions we want: video, news about the university, external information, in this case related stories. And as you select that type, it's going to automatically select an image for you. So in this case, they're not uploading an image, it gives you the image to use. We enforced character limits on this, so they're not able to really make a promotion that looks off-brand or is messy content. But again, this is all fully accessible. And I'll show you just another variant of this so you can see. But again, imagine your faculty profile just in the middle of your content, stuck right in there. That's the same thing we did here. And then here's just another, like I said, a different type of that same block. There it goes. So this is the event, right? And we got fancy and we basically said, you pick the date of your event, and we have 30 different thumbnail images, so you can have your icon with the right date on it. But you can see how it allows them to be flexible, but within a system that you've really thought about before. It's not just toggle options and pick a color. It's really like, think about what you're trying to do with this block and lock it down in a way that is usable but not abusable. Awesome. So I do think that comes to, let's see, I think that's, so you can contact me via, I have my website, got my email, but I prefer LinkedIn. So if you want to talk about this, you want to talk about WordPress, Drupal 7, reach out to me. And, I love sharing what I do, but also participating in the community and learning from all you as well. So if you have questions, I can take questions.
The CSS you had.
Yeah.
The last slide.
Yep.
Where does that end up when you render it out on the front end? Because that's in PHP.
Yes, you're right. So that's just the dynamic styles. So there's a style file, a CSS file that's in the plugin that handles like the styles that are just not going to change. That was actually in the block template, and it only includes where I'm trying to inject those variables into the styles. So those are actually inline styles in the template. But really, that's just because they're pulling in those variables. But like I said, it's a little bit redundant in my example because I kind of got halfway through and then ran out of time to make it streamlined. But yeah. Nick.
I have a question on, you were using Pattern Lab to kind of create your block style or your styles before your block. Are you also creating a single source of truth for design in that way?
Yes, that's the idea. And Pattern Lab allows you to output templates basically. So if you follow the whole workflow, it's all JSON driven. There's a lot of variables you can inject. You can have style variants. You can put parameters onto these things so you can really be flexible within a system, but it doesn't allow you to introduce, one-off buttons, and really allows you to, ask those questions. What is going to be the variance of a button? So before you get to Gutenberg, like, okay, our buttons can be small, medium, or large. So that might be an option that you put into Gutenberg. But if it's not in your pattern lab, it shouldn't be editable in Gutenberg.
So, does this plugin kind of use the theme styles, like the theme palette?
So this was, the plugin it only has styles for layout. So that's how we saw the grid and the responsive view for mobile. But it's running on 2019, a child theme of 2019. But the idea here is that you could upload this to any theme and you're still going to get a similar style. But yeah, you'd definitely want to think about how this integrates with your theme. And in some use cases, you might want to build this into your theme. Like if that's how you work and your site is, if you're not running multiple themes, it might be nice to package it in the theme. Actually, for the feed.georgetown.edu, we actually rolled it into the theme because it was unique to that site and very specific. So,
Comment and a question. So one thing, I've built a similar non-Gutenberg based block system using ACF Flex content. So one recommendation I can make for the styles is use class names for
Yeah.
your global classes instead of letting them pick colors and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, my question is, so this doesn't change anything where, like the content of those fields is still stored in the WP meta table, correct?
Actually, I believe the block styles get saved as
Not the styles, the content of the block.
yeah. I think it stores it differently. If you look at ACF's documentation, they mention that it's saved somehow in the HTML.
I see.
But I'm not
I'm curious
sure.
about migrating. So I have all these pretty complex ACF, repeaters and blocks and stuff, migrating them to blocks.
Yeah.
The other question is, have you had to do anything special for search to handle those?
Yeah, I've done a few other faculty directories that were pre-Gutenberg, so that did involve a search field and being able to filter based on department, but that was not Gutenberg related. So, but just doing Ajax and SQL queries to get that information. But yeah, I'm relatively new to this as well. I think we did this a couple months ago for the first time.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And the content is stored in the post meta table as a comment. So each HTML contents, it has a unique ID to it.
Mm-hmm. That is correct. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Anybody have any ideas for what they're going to do with this?
I just have a police comment. Don't put blocks in your themes ever. Blocks
That's
are
good.
square with like.
I like that. Yeah.
The reason is simple that at some point in the future, you will have to change your theme. And if you build the block into your theme, you will then have to port the code of the block into the new theme. So as much as possible, try to confine your blocks to a plugin, and ideally, exactly what you've done is just put the entire template and everything in the plugin, because then it's portable.
Yes.
But it also means your site doesn't collapse if you switch themes and you lose content. So,
Yeah, exactly. I'll just repeat that for the folks online is, you're going to want to build this into a plugin because themes will change, but your content might not. And you'll want to put your templates not in your theme, but in the plugin itself. And I think that's a really good idea because that's what really makes this, distributable. And, if you're building quality blocks, there's no reason why you can't share them with everybody and they should be able to run on most themes.
So what are your thoughts on it, since you're working with larger organizations, most folks here, like, what are your thoughts on doing it as a standard plugin versus like a must-use plugin? Like, are there?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good, we're actually, well, I had just left Georgetown, but they're dealing with this right now where the question is how we're going to distribute this across a multi-site and really if it's outside of that multi-site, how are we going to deliver this? And you shouldn't think about this as one block. You should think about in an organization, you're building a suite of blocks. So think about it as you're going to want a block library plugin. And you're going to want to give your users, or maybe at the admin level, the option to enable different types of blocks. So that's a little more complex, but if you're going to go through the trouble of developing these custom blocks, the way to avoid bloating that interface is to really think about what set of suite of blocks do my users need? And is there subsets? How do I organize that? And you're going to see a lot, I think we're going to see a lot of block library plugins, and there's going to be a lot of competition, just like there was with page builders. But the problem is you're going to get into it where you're going to have multiple block libraries running, and it's going to be a mess. So we want to avoid that. So I think that's where we go back to what is the patterns we're following, what is the brand, what is the type of content that we're trying to deliver, and how do we design that first before we unleash what is the block. Cool. Any other questions? Well, I just want to say I have enjoyed, this is my first WordPress Campus conference, and it's been amazing. I've learned so much from everybody. So I just want to thank you guys, and I hope you guys are getting to it with this, and let me know what you do with it. I'm excited to hear about it. Cool. Thanks, everybody.